Okay, so I'm sat here with Andrew Pearce from GB News fame as well as print media. I believe you've been at the Times, haven't you? And the Daily Mail.
I was 9 years in local papers,
Yeah.
starting in 1979. I started on the Gloucestershire Echo. It's a local paper 40 miles from where I was brought up in Swindon. And I started work on the Echo 2 weeks after my A levels. So I didn't do the university stuff. Then I was on the Times for 17 years. I was on the Telegraph for 4 or 5. And I've been on the Mail for 14 or 15 years, columnist, and I've got a posh title of what is my posh title? It's consultant editor, which means
Consultant editor.
I consult the editor, not the other way around. And I've, as you know, I've had quite an extensive broadcasting career.
Absolutely.
First show was on BBC 5 Live back in 1998 with Fee Glover, who's now on Radio. Oh no, she's now on Times Radio actually. And then I was on LBC for about 15 years, and radio
Hmm.
LBC, and joined GB News a couple of years ago. And I still pop up on Good Morning Britain 3 days a week,
Okay, yeah.
doing some political punditry with my old sparring partner from the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire.
Okay. I must admit we've sort of given up in my house watching ITV or any TV for the most part. Um, However, I do listen to GB News on the radio quite a lot,
Good.
especially at work. I do enjoy the segments on there, I gotta admit. So, what is it like working at GB News? Because essentially it's a new station, a new news station. It got a lot of flack in the early days as well.
Yeah, at the very beginning, there were all sorts of technical problems, and there was a great debate: did they launch too soon? But you've got to get. There's always gremlins and technical problems when you launch a new radio station or new TV station. Those technical issues are pretty much gone, and it's like we're like the insurgents. We're taking on the BBC, we're taking on ITV, we're taking on Sky, and the there's a need for it, and that is reflected, Dean, in the viewing figures.
Yeah, they're quite high, yeah.
They're pretty strong. It's not. There's no spin here. They're easily available, and TV viewing figures are much more reliable than radio because radio is often based on surveys. TV
Hmm.
is accurate. So when I started on my show, we had as audience share about 0.4%. So that's 0.4% of everybody watching TV at that point between 9:30 and midday. And now it's consistently around 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and we even hit 4% a couple of weeks ago. So that's really positive, and it shows that people um, like the way we tell it because we tell it as it is. We're not constrained like the BBC is, and we make no secret of the fact we have opinions, and I express my opinions in a very forthright way, and people might disagree with them, but they get them.
I
And
gotta admit, that's one of the things I like about when I've got the radio on.
yeah,
The debate is there, whereas I
yeah,
never used to find that anywhere else. I gotta admit, I do enjoy that. Um, so you've pretty much lived your life, your professional life in journalism.
yeah.
Um,
I've never known anything else, and I don't know what else I could have done really because I'm not practical. My my dad worked in a factory on an assembly line in British Leyland. My mum worked for WH Smiths in the supply depot. My family weren't academic. I was the first one to do A levels, but from about the age of 13, I wanted to be a reporter. And
hmm.
I used to pepper national newspapers with letters about all sorts of issues, and it was quite a nice little way to earn some income actually. But also it meant I was getting my name in print, so that when I did start applying for jobs when I was in the sixth form at my comprehensive school in Swindon, St Joseph's, I could send to editors printed material which I'd had printed, so it showed that I was really proactive about
Mm.
getting a job in newspapers, and
And you had the accolades as well, yeah.
yeah, and I loved it, and I've loved it ever since, and it's very, very, very lucky for me that I started work in 1979, so what's that, 45, 46 years, I still love it.
Good, good.
I
I gotta
still
admit, see, my wife would tell you the only thing I'm good at really is talking to people. So I've started doing this podcast and it's just
Yeah,
growing.
good.
So again, I'm really happy that you said yes to come on. I think you're my biggest name so far, actually.
Ah,
So thank you for that.
well, that's
Um,
very nice of you.
no, it's genuine honesty, genuine honesty. So I appreciate it. So you mentioned about your mum working in the WH Smith
Yeah,
depot. Um, so that leads me on to the next question about the book,
yeah.
Finding Margaret. Tell us about that.
So, I've never written a book before, and everybody says every journalist has got a book in them, but I was never sure about that. I'd worked on books, I'd done chapters for other people, political books, that sort of thing. But I was adopted age 3, and so I spent
Right.
the first nearly 3 years of my life in an orphanage in Cheltenham. So extraordinary that my first newspaper job was in Cheltenham. It was almost a return to where it all began. I was born in Bristol. I growing up, all I knew about my birth mother was her first. I didn't. Did I know her first name? No, I knew nothing about her at all. Uh, I, she was a single parent, and I assumed she was Catholic because I was put in a Catholic orphanage run by the Sisters of Nazareth. And mum and dad adopted me when I was 3. They already had 3 children, Susan, Shirley, and Chris. I was the only
Hmm.
one they adopted, and and there was no resentment by any of my siblings. They just welcomed this curious little boy who didn't say very much. Apparently, I hardly ever spoke in the orphanage. You could argue, Dean, that I've made up for lost time. Uh, I was tongue-tied and awkward. But over the years, I'd often thought about Margaret, my birth mother. Where is she? Is she alive? Is she anxious? Would she be concerned about me? And my dad, George, he said to me a few times before we lost him to the twilight world of Alzheimer's. He grabbed my hand and said, "You know what, son? You should track down your birth mother because she really cared about you. She used to visit you in the orphanage." Now, that was a revelation to me. I didn't know that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so she used to visit me regularly, and so as I got, we dad died in 2002, and as I got closer to my 50th birthday, I thought I've got to do it soon because I assume that my birth mother's probably 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, something like that when she had me. So I thought, so I'm getting close to 50. She's getting closer to 70. She could have Alzheimer's, she could have dementia, ill health. She might die.
Mm.
So I should do it. And I'd already found out almost by accident. I was on a job for the Times in where you get marriage certificates and birth certificates. And I thought, oh, I'll look for my birth certificate because I'd never seen it, and I was
Right.
about 35 then. So I look, you look in the register, and I looked for February 1961. Andrew Pierce, born in Bristol. I did know I was born in a hospital in Bristol. No sign of my name. This was very puzzling. So I went to the information desk, and the man said very nicely, "Are you adopted?" And I thought, well, is it the way I walk then, or the way I talk? How can you possibly know that? So he took me to a little side room and said, "Look, your registration will be not as the name you are now, it would be the name you had when you were born." Well, of course, I didn't know that. But
Mm.
anyway, he was great. He took me back to the farm. We went through February the 10th, 1961, and we found one boy born February 10th, 1961, in Southmead Children's Hospital, Patrick James Connolly. I had known actually that my first name was Patrick, so that helped. That was all I did know. So there it was, black and white. I'm as Irish as they come, Patrick James Connolly. Mum and Dad had changed my name to Andrew, but kept James. So I had that information. So without telling my mum, I decided to track down my birth mother, and I did find her. And the book Finding Margaret is not about finding Margaret Thatcher, although I did vote for her. It's about finding Margaret Connolly as she was, and the book is an extraordinary. It's a bit of a thriller, really. Um, I was astonished to discover that she wasn't 18 or 19 when she gave birth to me. She was 34. She was
Really?
just a few weeks from her 35th birthday, and then she gave me up for adoption when she was nearly 37. Almost unprecedented in those days. You've got to remember Britain had a very dim view of single parents in the early 1960s. She was an
Hmm.
Irish Roman Catholic living in Birmingham, which was bizarre because my second newspaper after the Gloucestershire Echo was the Birmingham Mail. So I was working in the same city where my birth mother lived, but didn't know she lived there. And I thought back, she probably read the Birmingham Mail. She probably read my stories. Maybe I even passed her in the street. Who knows?
Maybe.
So, but I did find her, and it was an extraordinary emotional meeting because I planned it all with military precision, and I took a friend, Amanda Patel, who's a columnist on the Daily Mail. She's my best friend. We'd got advice on what to do. So I was in
Hmm.
the car round the corner in a taxi, and Amanda knocked on the door. Nobody in. And I'd been so psyched up for this moment. First time I've going to see my birth mother
Mm.
or talk to her for the best part of half a century. She wasn't in, but there was a dog barking. And so Amanda just had to wait. And to cut it, long story short, as I looked out the back window of the taxi, I could see a dot emerging on the horizon. And I rang Amanda and said, "She's walking down the street. Who is?" I said, "Margaret." She said, "What? What are you talking about? How do you know?" I said, "There's a woman walking down the street. It's my birth mother." How did I know that? She walked past the car. I couldn't particularly see any likeness, although we do look similar. And I remember thinking, it's her. Am I about to turn this woman's life upside down? She went to the right door. Amanda knocked on the door. She flatly denied it was her, said it wasn't true. Very sorry. It's all very cruel. So, being journalists, Amanda and I did what any journalists do at 10:30 in the morning. We went to the pub and we drank a hauling bottle of rosé. And my great friend Jane Moore, who's one of the presenters of Loose Women, who technically found Margaret, called and asked what had happened. And she said, "It's definitely her." Amanda knew it was her because she could see the likeness. "She's got to go back." So Amanda
Hmm.
went back to the house. She knocked on the door. Margaret opened it and said, "I've been praying to the good Lord you'd return. It's me. Tell him I'll see him, but not today." And we did meet. And then lots of extraordinary things happened. So that's the story of finding Margaret. And it took me to Ireland, it took me to Birmingham, Cheltenham, Bristol. And there's an extraordinary story in there about potentially my birth father, who was killed in a car crash, struck by a runaway car just a few weeks after I was put in the orphanage. But is he the father? I even tracked down the man who was standing next to him that when that car hit him in 1961.
Hmm.
Who said he didn't know that this guy, he was called Jimmy Coffey, had a girlfriend, let alone an illegitimate child in an orphanage. So the readers will have to decide whether they think he is my father or not. And there will be a follow-up book, Dean, because I've met Jimmy Coffey's family and they're up for doing a DNA test, which will
That's good.
establish whether he is my father. And I subsequently met one of Margaret's children, her eldest son, and guess what? We look alike, and we got on very well. And it was a bit of a shock for him to discover, at the age of nearly 60, that his mother had had a secret child that she told nobody about, not anybody. And the reason she'd given me up for adoption was because she'd fallen in love with a man called Patrick Lennon, another Patrick, and she married him. And so she gave me up for adoption. She took her chance at happiness, and I don't blame her. Because it was going to be very difficult for her as a single parent to ever
Yeah.
give me a home. And Patrick Lennon would not have had anything to do with Margaret if he'd known she had a secret, illegitimate child in an orphanage 50 miles from Birmingham. So that's the story
No.
of finding Margaret.
Okay. It seems like it's quite an emotional ride for you as well.
It was very
Um,
cathartic writing it actually, because
yeah.
I mean, there were a few moments when I'd done an audio copy of the book. When I was reading the audio copy, a couple of times I had to stop because it really is quite emotional. And I still have this great guilt that I never told my mum that I did it, because how would my mum, who adopted me, who loved me very much, how would she have felt if she'd known? So I decided to never tell her. So mum went to her grave thinking I'd never looked for my birth mother. And I think that was the right decision.
No. Did it change the dynamics of your adoptive family, like your relationship with them, do you think? Or has it since?
No, my big sister, um, uh, we lost my other sister sadly during
I'm
COVID.
sorry.
But my big sister, when I told her I'd written a book, and she said, "Have you done your autobiography?" I said, "Who'd want to buy that? Some boring old journalist." No, I said, "It's about finding my birth mother." And she burst into tears. And I said, "Are you really cross that I found her?" She said, "No, I've always been amazed that you hadn't done it before." She said, "But you didn't tell Mum, did you?" I said, "Absolutely not." She said, "That's why I'm crying, because I'm so glad you didn't." And I think my sister is curious about it, but I think she's quite reassured that I'm not looking for a second family. I don't need a second family. I've got a family. I've got nephews and nieces, and I'm very fond of them. And I love my big sister. She was staying with me in London just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
Uh,
you went to the Lion King, I saw.
we did. She lost her husband only 6 months ago, and
Oh,
she
bless.
met him when she was 15, and she's now 72. So she's had a lifetime with Ian, and it was devastating. And there's no point going over it, but
No, no, I
I don't
appreciate that.
I don't think the NHS was at its finest. So yes, I'm very close to her. But so she's very reassured that the Pierce family is my family, and the Connollys are my blood relations. But that's it.
No, I get that. So just to move away from
Yeah,
an emotional subject, you've always been Tory Boy Pierce. I followed you on Twitter for a long time.
yeah.
Obviously seen you on the television. I've read some of your articles in the past as well. Why do you put yourself on that side of the fence?
Do you know, it started when I was very young. My dad, as I said, worked on the assembly line in British Leyland in Swindon. And in the 1970s, when I was a teenager, the industrial relations record at British Leyland, it was just appalling. There were strikes all the time, which would often mean cancelled holidays, and it was difficult because you couldn't go down the social security and get benefits like you can now. And Dad I'd come home from work and I'd notice immediately there was a problem, because what was he doing home from work?
Hmm.
And in those days, the vote for a strike was a show of hands. And he would say, there were more hands against the strike, but the shop steward said, "Right, that's a vote for out, brothers, out, brothers, out." So they're out and strike again. And this curious sounding woman called Margaret Thatcher, who was leader of the Tory party, was saying in the build up to the 1979 election, "I will outlaw those ballots. There will be proper secret ballots before strike action." And I said to my parents, "This could transform your lives and the lives of this family. It could transform everything about working for British Leyland." But they were tribal Labour voters. I can remember when a woman across the street put a Vote Conservative poster in the window, my mum saying, "Who does she think she is?" It was a Labour voting council estate. I was in a comprehensive school with lots of kids of factory workers, but I was determined. So in the election in May '79, I went to the polling station with my brother, who was an apprentice at British Rail, and he looked over my shoulder and saw I voted Conservative, and he shouted and hollered at me in the polling station, "Oi, how can you do that? You're working class, your dad works in a factory, we live in a council house, you go to a comprehensive, you can't vote for that terrible woman, rip it up." I said, "I'm not ripping it up." He shouted at me all the way home. Now,
Really?
he
Really?
broke the criminal law, because you're not supposed to look at people's ballot
No,
papers.
you're not. It's supposed to be confidential.
Yeah, and so I voted for Mrs. Thatcher, and then when I started working for the Times in 1988, that was my first job on a national paper. I was based in Parliament in the
Hmm.
gallery in the front row, and I was a gallery reporter. And it was Mrs. Thatcher was Prime Minister and in her pomp, and it was just so thrilling for me that this woman I admired was Prime Minister, and across the chamber was Neil Kinnock, who I wasn't a great fan of. And in later years, believe it or not, I wouldn't say she was a friend, but I became friendly with Lady Thatcher, Mrs. Thatcher.
Oh,
And
you got to meet her then?
I did. I used to take her for lunch at the Goring Hotel in Victoria. That's where Catherine Middleton and her family spent the night before her wedding to Prince William.
Oh, okay.
And or I take her to the Ritz. And this was when I was on the Daily Telegraph. And
Hmm.
she was mentally frail and forgetful. But she'd come alive if you mentioned Arthur Scargill. But she often just wanted to talk about grandchildren and life in general. She always had the same thing. She always had um, lemon sole off the bone and some consommé beforehand, one glass of wine, because in her day, Mrs. Thatcher used to like a drink, but and it was very lovely. And at the Ritz in particular, when we leave, I'd link arms with her, and the pianist would play a Nightingale in Berkeley Square, and she would say to me, "Do you know, dear, that was mine and Dennis's favourite song?" And I said, "Is that so, Lady Thatcher?" And she'd say yes. And of course, we knew that, which was why the pianist always played it whenever she.
Right.
And you know, sometimes when I left the restaurant with her, there would be a standing ovation. People would stand up and applaud her and clap her. Very moving. And people would come up to her if they had a child and say, "Can you please touch my child? Because I want to tell them that they met the great Margaret Thatcher." Some people didn't agree with her, but they knew she was an historic figure, our
Hmm.
first woman prime minister, the longest serving prime minister of the 20th century. And so it was a real moment for me. In my study here in my flat in London, it's like a shrine to Mrs. Thatcher. I got a confession. I've even got a life-size cutout of her.
I was
Next to,
interviewing.
next to a life-size cutout of Joan Collins, by the way.
You're friends with Joan Collins
I
as
am.
well, aren't you? Yeah.
I am. I've just come back from staying with her in the south of France. She's got a beautiful house in a place called Ramatuelle, which is above Saint-Tropez. And I've known Joan for maybe 10 or 12 years. I met her at a dinner party at, of all people's house, Michael Goves, who was then, I think he was education secretary, might have been the chief whip, can't remember. And we got on like a house on fire. And we've been really good mates ever since. And I go and stay with him in France a lot, every year actually. And in fact, we just booked up. We're going to see Oliver Twist in the theatre in next month and or in October. And she's great company, and Percy's great, her husband. I'm older than her husband, you know.
Really?
He's
Okay.
he's 60 next month, and she doesn't like people talking about her age, but she was
What
born.
lady does?
No, what lady does? So I'm not going to say her age, but people can look it up. But she was born in the 1930s. She's incredible. She's still working. There's a major film coming out. It'll be out in March of her playing the Duchess of Windsor, the one who triggered the abdication crisis with Edward VIII. And she's playing the Duchess of Windsor in her declining years
Right.
after Edward VIII has died. And it's an extraordinary story. And I've seen some of the photographs. It's Joan Collins as you've never seen her before.
What's
Extraordinary.
the film called again?
I can't remember.
Okay. I'll look it up on
Yeah,
IMDb.
do.
I reckon that'd be worth a lot,
Oh,
worth a
yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
Did you were you ever a fan of Spitting Image? The reason I ask
Yeah.
is we were talking about Lady Thatcher.
Yeah.
I recently interviewed the person who did her voice for her puppet,
That's Steve.
Stephen Allen.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant guy.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, very funny.
I loved Spitting Image. I was hooked on it. And in fact, I had, but someone took it off me. I've actually held the Spitting Image puppet of Mrs. T.
I was going to ask have you got it in your shrine, but
Yeah.
if you've held it, that's close enough.
And there was a wonderful exhibition at the Barbican about political cartoons and everything from sort of Hogarth to um, the cartoonists in our national papers today. But there was one room, and they created um, a Last Supper, and it was all the Pitting Image characters from Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. And John Major was under the table with a trail of frozen peas, and Mrs. Thatcher was, of course, holding a machine gun. It was quite extraordinary,
I
and
bet that's amazing.
she was very amused. But she was very amused by it. She said it didn't do her image any harm at all. I'm not sure I quite agree with that, because it did make her look like a despotic lunatic. But no, it's a great program.
No, good, good. So, what I'll do is I'll put a link to the Amazon for your book.
Yeah,
But I just want to finish up with obviously you're known on Twitter as Tory Boy Pierce. You've
yeah.
voted Conservative for a long time. Um, are you still a Conservative now? Are you drifting towards reform?
It's a struggle to be Tory at the moment because
Yeah.
the last, I mean, they've been appalling for years. They squandered the opportunities from Brexit. I've known Boris Johnson for years. I'll just tell you a brief story about Boris Johnson. When I was on the Telegraph, I was editing the paper that day, and he was writing his column that day for the next day, which is always a nightmare dealing with Boris. But it was the last day of the Beijing Olympics, and so we've seen these powerful images of Boris Johnson atop a London, an open top red double-decker London bus, and he was waving the Union flag. It's a great scene. So he calls while I'm in conference. He said, "I've got it in my column. I don't know what to do it on." I said, "For God's sake, Boris, the entire world has seen you on that London bus. Talk about the Beijing Olympics. Talk about London 2012, because he hoped to still be mayor during the London 2012 Olympics, and indeed he was. Brilliant idea, Piers. Brilliant idea. I'll have the copies to you in an hour." It was about 10:30 in the morning. 9 o'clock at night, copies still hadn't arrived. And I think, you can't have a whole white blank sheet in a broadsheet paper. What am I going to do?
No.
Copy dropped at 9:15. Boris's contract, you can't change a word. It was a beautifully written piece about Chinese culture, Chinese food, Ming vases. Didn't even mention the Olympic Games. I could have murdered him. However, I still trailed it on the front, on Boris on China and London 2012. So unreliable. So unreliable. So back to the Tories. They've been hopeless. Rishi was a disaster. Liz Truss was a disaster. They deserve to lose, and they deserve to lose badly. I have to tell you, I am astonished by just how quickly Keir Starmer's government has unravelled. I've known Nigel Farage for years and years and years, and he's a compelling character. And it was Tony Blair who said in the New Statesman this week, he is the most charismatic and effective communicator in modern politics for generations. What he means is since him. That's what he really means, Blair. So I'm not at reform yet, but I think there is a real serious chance that they will be in government in the next election, because I think the public are sick to death of the Tories. They're not interested. They're not listening to them. They'll get rid of Kemi Badenoch at some point. It'll be either Robert Jenrick or James Cleverly, I assume. And I think they're pretty sick of Labour. And I think reform could come through the middle. We could have a reform sort of Tory coalition. And I think people will give them a chance, because they think Labour and the Tories have messed it up for years. Give somebody else a chance.
So you've gone in these political circles longer than I've longer than I
You've
will
been on the
refer
planet.
to. Maybe. Yeah, well, I'm 39 today, so maybe.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So would it be that reform maybe are the new Tories? Because there's a lot of defection from the Tory party I see to reform.
Yeah.
But if reform become the new Tories, then will anything really change?
Well, they've got to be careful of it too, because they want to attract a lot of Labour voters. And if they keep getting Tories defecting, people think it is Reform Tory Party light. And I talked to Nigel about this and said, you need some serious Labour defections. I know they've got their eye on one MP they think is a potential, but I think what could happen next May, I think Reform are going to make major advances in local elections. And you've heard it here first, they're going to take Wales. So they will control a country of the United Kingdom for the first time. So they will control the Principality of Wales. That would be seismic for the Labour Party, which has been in control of Wales forever, really. They're going to do much better in Scotland than people expect. They're still not doing very well in London, but I think that will change. But I think when people see the scale of Reform's advances next May, there will be some high-profile Tory defections. Think Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, potentially. And I think you might see some Labour councillors and MPs crossing the floor too. We are in uncharted territory, and every now and again, you'd have to think back to when Labour won its first election. What, it was 100 years ago. Every 50 years, 100 years, there is a seismic change, and I think we are on the verge of it. And it's the Tories' fault. How many leaders have they had? I can't even remember. I've lost count. And Badenoch's made no impact. And who's listening to them? No one.
No,
they can bang on all they like about the small boats crossing the channel. What did they do about it?
Well, yeah, they had 14 years, didn't they?
They had 14 years.
And nothing.
Years.
And it seems like Labour just I can't speak to Labour. I'm not part of the Labour Party. I can't speak to their methods, but it just seems like there's no will to stop it.
No will whatsoever. Here's another thing I think will be a factor at the next election. We had 4 independent Muslims won seats from Labour at the last election. They will win more because the Gaza situation is totally toxic for Labour MPs. And Jeremy Corbyn's party, which is going to launch next week, will steal a lot of votes from Labour, and Gaza will be a big factor. So I think the Labour Party is facing a serious, serious crisis. So here's another prediction. Wes Streeting, the health secretary, many people think could be the next Labour leader, I think he'll lose his seat. His majority is already down to 550. And it was an independent Muslim who nearly beat him. And that seat will be even more difficult for him next time. So we're going to see big Labour figures losing their seats to the Corbyn party, which will work with these independent Muslims. Who'd have thought Jeremy Corbyn at 75 could still be causing problems for the Labour Party? But he is. And I mean, let's be honest, he nearly won the election in 2017 against an appalling Theresa May.
He did. People I've spoken to who won't say this on camera, but I'll ask you the question because you've been in those political circles. The Gaza situation, the Israel-Palestine situation, is that something that UK politics should be taking heed of because it's something in a foreign land? Why is it so impactful on voting here?
I think it's because the TV images are so shocking, particularly the ones, those aerial photographs which show the scale of the bombardment of Gaza. And also, I think the massacre on Israeli land by Hamas was so appalling. But I think because we have such a large Muslim population now in Britain, and we're having marches in central London every Saturday without fail, it's brought it into our homes, and the broadcasters cover it big. And I think it is a major issue, but I think Britain is a minor player in it. I said the only way the Israeli conflict, I think the only way this can stop is if Donald Trump says to Benjamin Netanyahu, enough, I'm going to withdraw financial support, I'm going to withdraw military support. But I don't think Trump is there at the moment, because I think Trump is the only one Netanyahu listened to. He couldn't care less what the EU thinks, he couldn't care less what Britain thinks. Likewise, I think Gaza's become much more emotive, far more emotive than Ukraine, even though Ukraine is on European soil, and it's the most serious conflict on European soil since the Second World War. And while I think people have become Ukraine fatigued, they just haven't in Gaza, because it's those images of those children, the starving children. And look, I'm a supporter of the state of Israel. And I've met Netanyahu. I met him actually out in Israel when Blair was Prime Minister. And ironically, his popularity, which plunged to record lows after the Hamas massacre, is now at an all-time high.
I think that's because, like Trump, he seemed to be doing something.
Absolutely
Speaking
right.
of Trump, how envious are you that Bev Turner got to go on Air Force One?
It's quite interesting. Bev Turner, my co-presenter on TV News, she's just about to start a show in Washington. It'll go out midnight till 2 a.m. British time. Cleverly was out in Washington, flew on Air Force One to Britain for Trump's Scottish visit. And I think it's fair to say, of course, she's clever and interesting and insightful, but I think Donald Trump noticed her more than he would have noticed me. She's 6'1", brunette. Donald Trump likes tall women. I met Ivana Trump. She was taller than me. And his current wife is tall. He likes tall women. And she and he struck up quite a rapport on that trip in Scotland. And when he comes here for the state visit, which is in a few weeks' time, she will be on Air Force One again, and he'll be taking questions from Bev Turner. And I suspect she's going to get an exclusive interview with Donald Trump, which I suspect I'd have had to wait quite a long time for, because, trust me, I don't look great in stilettos.
Oh, well, I'm not one to judge. To be fair, that's something me and Trump have in common. My wife's nearly 6 foot. I'm 5'10".
They're
So,
right. Yeah. Striking. She's a very striking woman, and he likes striking women. And also, actually, she asked direct questions, and she's a Trump admirer, a Trump fan, and she wanted Trump to win the election. And I predicted at the time he would win the election because I thought Kamala Harris was a lousy candidate, and the Democrats should be holding their heads in shame for allowing Biden to soldier on for so long when he clearly mentally was incapable. It's a disgrace, and I think the First Lady has a lot of responsibility for that. I think she was enjoying running the world because she was in charge. So they needed to get him out much sooner so they could have got a much bigger, stronger candidate. So the Democrats, it's all their fault. And Trump, let's be honest, what a great story for journalism.
absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you again for your time today, Andrew. I know you've given me
Pleasure.
well over half an hour, so
Are
I
you
appreciate it.
celebrating your birthday today?
I am. I celebrated with far too many rums last night. Long may it continue.
Enjoy.
I'm spending the day with my family this afternoon and my wife.
Okay.
No idea what we're doing, but I know I'm spending a day with them. And I will put a link, as I said, to your Amazon and anywhere else I can find your book in the description below this.
That's very nice of you. And let me make sure that when it's done and it's out there, that I can put it on my social media because I've got lots of followers on Twitter, 350,000. So we can
No,
get
no, absolutely. I will send you the link as soon as it's processed on YouTube.
brilliant. All right then. Lovely to meet you and happy birthday.
Yeah, you too. And again, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Great to talk to you. Bye bye.
Bye bye now. There we go.
Great stuff. Hope that was okay.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you again.
Pleasure. Anytime. And if you need, if there's other people you think I might be able to help you with, just give me a shout.
Oh, I will.
I've got a
Thank
good
you.
contacts book. All right.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime. Have a great day. Bye bye now.
Bye bye now.